On time. So I am April Chatham Carpenter, and I am the department chair for the Department of Applied Communication at UA Little Rock. And I just want to welcome you all here. We do these leadership lectures 2 times a year, and usually they are folks that are either faculty or alumni who are doing really cool things. All of our faculty, we believe, are doing really cool things, as well as our alumni. And this year, we got the privilege of actually honoring 2 of our alumni in the make with our Making a Difference Award. And one of them was our speaker tonight. And JJ Pitman, I'm going to introduce you, JJ, and then turn it over to you shortly. And then we are going to have a time at the end for some questions and answers. So JJ actually serves currently as the director of the CA Vines Arkansas 4-H Center. You know, JJ was telling us the story about his first 4-H meeting being at 2 weeks old. So you'll have to ask him a little bit about how did he get involved at 2 weeks old. He was raised in an extension household on a farm and had much experience working with hauling hay and adventure-based challenge courses, leading backpacking leadership programs as he got older. And that really gave him an appreciation for motivating people through all different kinds of means. He's certainly the director of the center, and he often conducts leadership and team development training, consults, and he works with youth through the Arkansas 4-H Center programs. He was telling me that today he spent time with over 500 4-Hers across the state of Arkansas as they went to the Capitol to meet their own legislators. He's also an alumnus of Lead Arkansas and Leadership Greater Little Rock. He served in leadership service roles in both of those groups. He began working for the Extension Service in 1999, has held 6 different positions since coming there, primarily with the 4-H area. And so we're very excited tonight to have him come and talk to us about motivation and engagement in today's organizational environment. So I know that we're all muted, and if we were here, we would give him a hand. So you can do kind of jazz hands if you want, or like this to welcome JJ with us. So JJ, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you're going to be spotlighted by Kristen, and we'll learn from you, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. So JJ.
So I don't know if the snow in the background shows my blushing face, but I've got 2 previous professors on this Zoom session. I also have 2 LEADAR alums. They weren't class members, but it's nice to see that. And so thank you all for showing up this evening. Appreciate it. So this background was actually February of last year at the 4-H Center, but it was 2 weeks ago, a year ago. So that's not what it looks like at the 4-H Center. It's like 74 degrees. We have a group here that's called Food Corps. They're part of a AmeriCorps group, but they're from all over the United States. And a lot of them were even in the Northwest Portland area. And they were out there laying in the grass today. You would have thought they were at the beach, just loving it and having a great time and soaking up some vitamin D. So, April was telling you that we had the opportunity to go to the state capitol today, and we invited 400 4-Hers from around the state and gave them an opportunity to meet their legislators, and it was a good day. It was fun. They got the opportunity to speak to them and kind of listen to what the legislators had to say. When I arrived, I was a little nervous because there were about 200 people there protesting one of the bills that was going to be brought up today, so I was like, oh, that could be an issue. 200 of them, 500 of us, but I didn't even see them after we went over there with all our green shirts on. So I don't think we intimidated them. Maybe, I'm not sure. Anyway, kids were good, no issues that we know of. You know how it is. You'll find out 2 weeks later that there could have been issues, but it seemed to go well. So, okay, well, that's not why you came today. So I'm going to share screen with my presentation here. We'll see how this goes. And okay, all right, let me get up here and come beginning. Okay.
Hey, JJ, we see the next slide view also.
Let's see here. If I find
I
out
know
what we fixed that earlier.
We did fix that earlier. Yeah.
So, you know, you would think with as much time as we spent on Zoom and all that, that everybody would be an absolute tech genius, but some of us were able to miss out on that. There we go. Can you see just one slide now?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about motivation and engagement, and it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid between the experience I've had working with youth and as a supervisor. So I've had the opportunity to be a supervisor for uh, about 21 of the last 24 years, but also uh, with the leadership and team development program that I've worked with approximately 15 years. So it's interesting with the team building and the leadership program that we've had the opportunity to work with. What we do is we set up a series of initiatives, and we have the group go through these initiatives as a group, and then we take the time to process them. So it's taking your work environment in a different scenario, and we have them kind of talk about this, process it, and debrief in a controlled setting, and people have some awareness about their own leadership styles. So that's kind of how we've been able to observe it. We also have the opportunity to take camps. We see kids from as young as 5 years old all the way to 19-year-olds at camps here of various lengths. But one of the main ones, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is the High Adventure program, which I love that program. I've had the opportunity to go on that program 24 different trips. This is where we take teenagers out of state typically, and we'll put them in a wilderness situation where we'll be with them for about a week in the wilderness, and that can vary from New Mexico to we've been to North Carolina, Kentucky, and the boundary waters in northern Minnesota, and a few trips within Arkansas. But July and August in Arkansas, you can imagine what that's like backpacking. So plus the experience needs to be completely different. Part of the idea of that program is to get them out of their comfort zone. Some kids show up with a kitchen sink, and the screens, so they'll think that they can take their iPads, and we get them out there, and it gives them the opportunity to interact with others. And a lot of times the other kids and other teenagers in the group may be strangers, but they have the opportunity to have an experience where they can be a leader and they can watch other people in their leadership roles. And so it's an intense, immersive opportunity to share with these kids some of the research-based leadership techniques and strategies that we've been able to pick up over the years. So why is the university involved in something like that? It is so that we can teach them life skill development. And there's about 7 life skills that we emphasize, and that can be, that can be anywhere from just general leadership, overall communication. I think April had mentioned earlier that a lot of the people she talked to, having been in 4-H, one of the things that they really tout that helped them with was public speaking. So the ability to communicate and be persuasive and to interact, just work as a team. Management is another one that we emphasize. Well, when we talk about being in the wilderness, and management is, if you're not managing, even your clothing or how much food that you're taking with you, because we'll have enough food for around 5 days with us without having to go and pick up other food, because we'll be so in such a remote area. So these kids have to learn things like that, and how to set up their own living space, tent, keep your sleeping bag dry. I've been on some of those trips where it has rained every day, and I went on one year, it rained every day, most of the day. So talk about an opportunity for them to learn how to pull their weight. And then sometimes the motivation can wane when they get in a situation like that. So we'll start with just the definitions that I pulled, and basically motivation, the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. So you talk about watching people in a situation where they're uncomfortable, and our goal is to not push them outside of their comfort zone. Our goal is to help them learn how to deal with it. So the big picture here is, how do you take this, your awareness of how you're motivated, how you motivate others, and you bring it to a work environment, or even just your community, maybe with your family. Um, so engagement and the act of being engaged, uh, and because you can still be, someone could be motivated, but they may not be engaged with the people around them. So the value of being able to see that from a perspective of leading a group through that is see how each one, and you have the opportunity to make suggestions. Sometimes they're not open to suggestions, so you have to be creative in the ways that you would suggest being engaged. And I mean, there was one, uh, talk about both motivation and engagement. We were in New Mexico, and the altitude was somewhere around 10,000 feet, so not truly high, but enough that you could experience a little bit of altitude, discomfort and shortness of breath, things like that. Well, when you're carrying, 40 to 60 pounds on your back and you're trudging up a mountain, people have to really ask themselves, about their motivation. I had a student one year lay down in the middle of the trail, threw their backpack off and said, "That's it, I can't go any farther." Like, well, we, this is not a reset button on a video game. This is an opportunity, you dig deep. And I think we sat there for an hour and a half before the student was willing to get up and just push forward. But in that hour and a half, I did not do a ton of talking. It was the other members of the group trying to motivate, because we're not going to get to our destination. And where we were sitting in the middle of the trail was not a good place to camp. So you had to really dig deep and ask yourself, why are we doing this? And they went through all of Tuckman's phases. It was beautiful to see that happening from, after having an opportunity to study it in the program. So, but then they get to the point where they're performing, and so how do you motivate them? And sometimes it almost has to be your coworkers or your teammates to get motivation. It may not always be the one that has the leadership title, but how do you get them engaged? And we're going to talk about that a little more as we go forward. So here's an example. I think this may be Kentucky, and even though they're wearing shorts, it was cold, and it had rained on us for hours and hours. And we had several groups. I think our whole group was 45 in 4 different groups, but each small group only had about 10 at max. And then some of the others were adult leaders over there, just as help, but not part of the team. Our goal is to only step in with this group and give them instruction for a day, maybe a day and a half, and then have them slowly take over, so that by the end of the week, these teens are the leaders, and they're there, and so the adults are just along for the hike, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. But the parallel with that in a work situation has been fun, because sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, you've been part of a team, and you'll see people lose their cool and just feel extremely uncomfortable in a situation that many others may not see as uncomfortable. And it's interesting to watch that. And a lot of times I'm thinking, it's like, you guys need to go on high adventure. I think your comfort zone would change, for the better. But like I say, we don't push people outside their comfort zone. We give them opportunities to test themselves. We're obviously not going to leave anybody out there, something like that. And, things can happen. I think over the years, we started this program in 1987, and I think we've evacuated 4 people maybe over that time frame. I'd have to go back and check the records, but and we're talking about hundreds and hundreds students being able to go through that. But anyway, and so here's part of the motivation. You're going to have a brighter day, a sunnier day, and this. I think this may be New Mexico, but you're going to see places that you've never seen before, but it's because you've allowed yourself to go through that and push yourself and continue to motivate yourself and others. And what I've noticed through this experience, even though it's only a week, and I say that because there's outward bound programs and NOLS programs that are, they can last months, even semesters. But toward the end, people, what was the edge of their comfort zone in the beginning of that is completely different by the time they reach the end of the week. And that's the idea, is that you put yourself through a series of initiatives that allow you to test that boundary. And people around you, and for some people that's what helps them get through, and some people it's just internally. But you've got to find out what motivates you to be able to help understand what other people, how they're motivated. So how do we get there? How can you get to motivate people? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. One, be willing to do anything that you would ask them to do, but you've got to prove it and you've got to practice it. Because I see a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, I would do that," and then you may not see them do that, whatever it is that you're asking other people to do. So if they see you in there getting your hands dirty and willing to do that and take the role that they would be in, no matter what your title is, I've seen some great results from that. People respect that. So I highly recommend it, no matter what you're asking them to do, whether it's serve food or dig a ditch or clean something that may not be pleasant to clean. Jump in there next to them, and not trying to show anybody up. That's obviously that could backfire. But whatever it is, be willing to do that. And even if it's you go out and how public speaking can sometimes be an issue with some folks, be willing to do that. I've noticed that they appreciate that usually. An open dialogue about performance. It's a little easier with the teens in a setting like the high adventure program, but even with coworkers, when you're talking about that, so that they're not surprised. Don't surprise them at the end of the year with an evaluation without having addressed it. If you have an issue with it before that, I think it was Jack Welch with GE. He's talking about like he does a minimum or did a minimum of 4 performance evaluations with his employees per year, so that people knew where they stood and they weren't surprised by the time they get that annual evaluation. So have open dialogue about performance. It can help so that things don't build, issues may not build. Listen and pay attention to your employees and teammates. Listen to what they're saying. Don't just overlook that, but you've got to be willing to act on it. So listening is one thing. Giving them the impression as though you're listening for the sake that, like, oh, I know I need to listen to them, is what they can see through that. You've got to act on it. Doesn't mean that you do everything that they recommend, request, but at least it opens that dialogue. And if it's feasible, even if it may not be exactly what you want to do, if it's not going to cause harm or do them, act on it, because it will build respect with them. I've seen that work multiple times. So coworkers and employees, they need to know and feel that you want them to succeed. Now, this is probably one of the most important bullet points in my presentation, is that you can think about groups that you've been a part of in the past, and how does that, you can tell if someone is not there to support you or truly wanting you to succeed. So they need to know and feel that, because in my experience that people will want to work harder toward the goal if they know that you as a leader want them to succeed. That's huge. So if you forget everything else with this, don't forget that bullet point. Coworkers or employees need to know that you want them to succeed. So what are you communicating? So consider what motivates you. I mentioned that earlier. Find that out, because if you truly don't have a good understanding of what motivates you, I want you to think about that for a moment. What is it that motivates you? I mean, some people, they're in it for the money. Okay, it's a job. And then there's some people that show up for volunteers. They want a T-shirt. That's it. They don't care. You could offer them, $1,000, or they want a T-shirt, and that's what they want. And it could be multiple things. Some people just want to be recognized. They just want recognition for being there, helping, or something. Whether it's a work situation or a volunteer situation. But you can find out what motivates you, and then recognize that it may be different than how others are motivated. It's important that you recognize that and act on that as well, because if you only find out what motivates you and you think that that's the way that other people need to be motivated, you may not get as much out toward the ultimate goal or mission that you're trying to achieve, because that may not be what lights, makes them excited about the work that you're doing. So recognize how it can be different and how others are motivated. How sustainable is incentive-based motivation? Example of incentive-based motivation could be money. It could be bonuses. It could be, gifts, things like that. Incentive-based motivation. Well, I think it's got a shelf life. Some people that may have answered the first bullet point on this page, I may have said like, well, yeah, money, that's what motivates me. Is it really, when it comes down to it? Is there more to it? Well, what would you do with that money? And sometimes people can find the motivation for their goal within not necessarily within money. It may be that recognition. It could be just they want to be part of a team that is accomplishing a mission that they truly believe in. And you'll see people that have jobs that they absolutely love and working toward a goal, and they're not making much money, and you're thinking, wow, why is this person only making X dollars? And it's because they truly care about what they're doing. They have other opportunities, but they believe in the mission. So Dr. Henry Cloud said, people who achieve things don't rely on motivation to do so, because it's eventually going to run out, but rather they rely on commitment. So think about that commitment piece. Like what is it that it's going to make you and the people around you to be engaged in that commitment. So I'll tell you a quick story about my daughter. When it was time for her to go to college, there was one university. Well, I'm part of the U of A system, so I get a discount for that. So this university, Fayetteville, was fourth on our list, and all the other colleges were private colleges. I mean, and most of them were out of state and significantly higher tuition and fees, and of course living out of state, the whole thing. So we basically said, we will support you what it would cost, and help you out with the discount and all that, but the difference would be on you. So it was a little bit of a sell to keep her in the state. And now my goal was not to keep her in the state. My goal was, I don't know, maybe it's call me cheap. I don't know. It's not settling for, forgive me if any of you went to Phoenix University, but anyway, I'll just say that it's not settling for a junior college, something like that. It was a flagship university. So, so we're sitting there. We went to several universities for the recruitment portion. And so she's in there with 300 other potential students. And the person that's involved in the honors college got up to speak and try to encourage the students to sign up for honors college. And my daughter was eligible, but was not interested in that. My son had not done it, and he had a good experience. And anyway, as they're talking about the different opportunities you could get through honors college and what additional commitment it would take, they mentioned a semester abroad. And so at that point, my daughter, I think she loves to travel as much as I do, and I love to travel. And if I travel every week, I'd be tickled. So they said a semester abroad, and then the lady went on to say, we University of Arkansas at Fayetteville has had students on 6 of the 7 continents. And at that point, my daughter raised her hand. I wasn't even sure if she was awake, but she raised her hand and said, "Well, what continent have we not been to?" And the lady said, "Well, we haven't been to Antarctica." So this is my daughter on Antarctica this last semester. So she did it as soon as she stepped foot on there. And those penguins are not superimposed, they're not Photoshop or anything. So anyway, she closed the loop. And but the point is she made a decision that day, and then 4 years later, um, she she achieved that goal. But it was not simply to be the first person to go to the 7th continent for the university, because like I said, she had no affiliate. I mean, other than my family having degrees from there, that did not drive her. Her driver was that she wants to do something meaningful to help with our planet. So she was able to get in our science program and some sustainability minors, things like that. And so she was mission driven to do that, but it took her several years of COVID happened during that. So Argentina shut down um, all study abroad programs. You couldn't get in or out of the country for months or even a year. So it set her back another year. But she was so dedicated to that because of the mission of her wanting to do something for the planet, for people behind her. So whatever it is for you and the people that you work with, you've got to identify and articulate the driving force for your ultimate or your big picture goal to help them get to the point where they're going to be engaged and they're going to be motivated. But if you don't take the time to do that, to identify and articulate the driving force of that big picture to help get them motivated, it's going to be an uphill battle. It can take more time to truly get buy-in for the folks that you're working with to help you all get to that place. And frequently sharing thoughts about why the mission is so important. April had mentioned earlier that my first 4-H meeting was at 2 years old. Yes, my dad worked for the Extension Service. He was a agriculture specialist in the northeast part of Arkansas. So yeah, 4-H, I don't even know life without 4-H. So you're thinking, well, is that very broad? Now, while I've worked here at the 4-H Center, like I said, for 15 years, I did leadership and team building, and there are not many organizations that we did not work with. So we work with Scouts and Kiwanis and Rotary and all kinds of, if you can name a youth organization, we Boys and Girls Clubs, we probably had the opportunity to work with them, and they all have great things to offer when you look at the missions and all that. So for us, 4-H is for life skill development. And I think a lot of people think it's 4-H is, ag, cows and cooking. That's the stigma. But it is so much more diverse now. They have technology teams. They still do sewing classes. They even had a food bowl, like a cooking competition, and kids get to travel all over. And we are really not as interested in what that activity area is. Like, they think if you raise livestock and you want to be able to show them at the fair and all that, that's not our overall goal. Our overall goal is to teach them life skills. That's why the university is involved in it. So our goal is to turn out these kids, by the end of the time they've gone through, extended 4-H program, they're going to be people that you want to hire. They're going to be people that you want to share communities with. Talking earlier about Minnesota, I was speaking to a professor from the University of Mankato, and they have an outdoor education program with experiential ed as being their major focus. and it's an extremely competitive PhD program there. And the professor I was speaking with, he had a student that had gone through the master's program while he was there. He was on the committee to decide which students were able to get into the PhD program. And he was talking to this student, and he said, I know you're a hard worker. I know you're worthy of being in this program. The rest of the committee members do not. You're going to have to give me something that sets you apart. What makes you the person that needs to get a PhD from our program, have the opportunity to do that? And she thought for a moment, and she said, well, I was in 4-H when I was a kid. And so she said that my project was livestock. It was a beef project. So she and her father worked on being able to AI or artificially inseminate this this cow to be able to, and they had a steer, so that she raised this calf after having AI, raised this calf and all the way through, like figured up the feed rations, went out there every day to feed this animal and make sure it's taken care of, fed, watered, learned all the mechanics behind an effective nutrition program for this calf, raised it, trained it, and won the county fair, then won the district fair, and eventually won their state fair in Minnesota, which is a huge deal. And the guy said, that's it. That's what I need, because it shows that you can take a project from the and follow something through all the way through and stay dedicated to it. And you can be motivated and driven to finish something like that. So that's the people want to hire. Somebody that has the ability to do that and do the research and put the work and the hours in. So I know I definitely have a theme with 4-H. I promise you, I'm not trying to convert you over to 4-H. I just, yes, I am biased because it's such a good thing. But whatever your organization is, you got to share your thoughts on why the mission is so important to you, and take a good solid look at that. This is another one of our high adventure programs. These kids are sitting in the United States, but they're looking at Canada. They're across that bay. So Boundary Waters, if you're not familiar with that, it's a canoe trip. This was in northern Minnesota, and we paddled for days to get to this point. And this is another one of those moments that, the weather was great, just a beautiful sunset, and you can hear the loons in the background. And so they have a little bit better understanding of how to be engaged and how to be motivated when they get these rewards like this. So now we're going to shift gears. You're like, oh, that's nice. Look at that beautiful view. Hey, cynicism. So I'm going to shift gears here. Here's some pitfalls and things that kind of keep in mind and watch out for as a leader. Avoid cynicism. Avoid the pitfall of being a cynic. I mean, that's an easy way out, and be careful because that can be contagious. So watch out for being a cynic. And it seems like, let me back up a little bit. It seems like recently, and I don't know if it's different popular figures being so cynical recently in the last few years, or if it is a social media issue, because the world has changed when people are so engaged in social media. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure there may be other potential reasons, but I mean, think about, they make the statement of Karens or Chads, and they're just so quick to be a cynic and things like that. So I'm not sure what the full reason is, but it seems to me I've noticed there's a shift in the last few years. So avoid that. Be careful what you say, because your team's listening, and your outlook is contagious. So especially if you're spearheading that team, whether it's a work or group, even a group of friends, what direction do you want that atmosphere to take? So avoid the cynicism. So is your ideal leader a cynic? I mean, is that who you look up to? And does that behavior motivate you? and typically not, but it's for each person to decide. But also, ask yourself that question, and it may help you direct what you say and how you say it to the people you're working with. If you're thinking about that ultimate mission and ultimate goal, is that going to motivate people to get there? So this, I just find this funny. And I thought about the motivation of the person that did this, Maddie Jones, I guess, and it just cracks me up every time. I'm just thinking what's going on in her head, and what a brilliant person. I don't know who Maddie Jones is, but I'd like to meet Maddie Jones. So if some of you don't know or can't see it very well, that's corn on the ground for for deer, and I think the dad asked her to put it out there to bait the deer, and so the kid sent him a message. So there you go. So recognize your employees' efforts. I think this is important, and I have to remind myself of this. I don't have an issue like just giving them praise. I try to do that and say thank you and appreciate it and all that. That's one way, but also, a lot of people are driven by public recognition around their peers, and so make sure it can return as motivation. Like I said earlier, it's like think about what motivates you, but pay attention to what motivates other people, because what motivates you is like, for me to get some plaques or awards, it's like it's different from other people getting a plaque or award. That could be their total drive. We talked about that, getting that T-shirt as a volunteer. That may be all it takes. So brag on your employees. It's free. Unless you find out it embarrasses them, then back off. But some people love it. I mean, don't go over the top, but it's free. Don't skip those opportunities, because I have had a few employees in the past that absolutely thrive on it. So don't forget that, brag on them. But don't expect anything in return. I had a supervisor at one point that was able to get something for where I was, and actually looked me straight in the eye and said, "You owe me for this." And I was taken aback. First of all, I didn't ask for what they had given to us. It was something that they thought was a great thing. And so talk about missing the boat for that person. Like that was not what motivated me. I could have listed, 20 things that would have been better for the organization or the team than what they decided to give us. And they were so proud of it. They actually told me that I owe them. And I said, well, I didn't ask for that. So I never heard about it again, but I think it might have hurt their feelings. But don't expect something in return. If you're going to do something for your employees or get something for them, just, even if you are expecting something in return, then don't let them see it. Okay, I'm just going to summarize here. Focus on the mission and the commitment to the cause. But the mission and the commitment are going to help you get to the motivation and engagement. So you got to go a little deeper to help them find that mission and commitment to what you're trying to do for the cause. And reflect on how you treat others. Take a moment, think about what motivates you, and how would you, and ask your employees or teammates, what motivates you? How are you going to and be more aware of it, just basically awareness about the other people around you. And avoid the cynicism. It can squelch motivation very quickly. I mean, it doesn't take, it takes a while to build up, but it doesn't take very long at all to squelch it. And like I said earlier, it's free. Most of the time, recognize others, especially just attaboys, and help them out, praise them for what they've done, especially it doesn't even have to be big things, and support their accomplishments. And what I said earlier, don't expect anything in return. Be there for them. Okay. Any questions?
All right, JJ, if you'll quit sharing your screen, I'll explain how we're going to deal with questions. So you can put your questions either in the chat, or you can raise a virtual hand. So what I would like to do is to field some questions now. And I know there's already a question in the chat. Kristen, Dr. McIntyre is going to actually look at the questions that are in the chat, and then I'm going to look for raised hands. So we're going to kind of go back and forth between that. So Kristen, you want to ask the first question in the chat?
Sure. So the first question comes from Dr. Carol Thompson. She says, enjoyed your presentation. If you could think of the most important thing you learned in our graduate program that helped you on the job you currently have, what would it be?
That's great. So the first two comments were from two previous professors. That's good. I knew better than to agree to do this. No, great question. I will tell you that as a facilitator with the leadership program, the name of the program we've got here is called Excel. Stands for Experience the Challenge, Experience the Leadership, and it's been going since 1985. I can tell you it completely changed the way I facilitate. I facilitated. I don't do as much of that anymore, but it allowed me to look a lot deeper and to look more toward what is truly motivating this team or these individuals. So, and certainly more, research-based outlook on the communication within the group. Just overall, I mean, it's hard to narrow down to one thing, gosh, but overall aspect of just taking a broader view of what's going to support this group. And I do remember one thing, and Dr. Eichholz, I think maybe was in her class. I'm not sure. It's been a while. 2003. I can't remember what I had for supper. So anyway, she was talking about in a consulting issue, like who's, oftentimes the person that brings a group to you as a consultant may be the person that's the true issue. And so we had to weed through that a few times. So being aware of that, and eloquently work through that when they've asked you to help them fix their team, but there could be the major root of the cause for the dysfunction of the group. That's, believe it or not, that's something I hadn't even thought about before that. So I know that sounds simple and trivial, but it's like, oh gosh, because you would like to think of a group, someone that's a group leader that brings a team to you for the betterment of the whole group, as one that's a visionary and wanting to see the team succeed when it's, they're the biggest holdup. So be aware of that. And if you guys are going to be consultants and you're looking at that and somebody comes to you for help, you got to be willing to have that that hard conversation with the person that could potentially be the driving issue that is causing problems.
All right, looking for some more questions. So virtual hands or something in the chat.
So we do have another question in the chat.
Okay.
This is from, I'm guessing it's Dr. Gerald Driscoll. Where do your high schoolers or other engaged in experiential learning identify when challenged to dig deeper, find a purpose for doing the hard work of a long hike, canoe, etc.?
Sometimes it's being next to the other students around them that helps drive them, because they don't want to be the person that stops or quits. So it can be contagious. The other kids are looking for that, to be able to, be motivated, and it pushes it, because you've been part of a group. Each of you have been part of a group when one person gets in a bad mood, and what is it? Oftentimes it can turn the entire group. Well, it's the other way around. You can find one kid, sometimes two or three, they're just in an amazing mood. I had a group one time that the hike, I mean, I try not to show it, but sometimes if a hike is miserable, the weather's terrible, and it's cold and we got a long way to go, high altitude, I don't know, something like that. But then there's one or two kids in there that have such a great personality and they're positive and they're having a great time. And you're like, how could they not be miserable? And it's like, I'm not even sure these kids have a comfort zone. They're just chatting away. I remember being in a windstorm one time and it was white capping and I was a little concerned about the freeboard of the canoes. Like it could have been a dangerous, you get out there in the middle of nowhere and the wind comes up and it's pushing them and they got way behind. And I was trying to formulate a plan. Like, what do we do if they get so far behind? So the rest of the group finally pushed through on the safe side of the mountain out of the wind, and they all got to the bank. And this other two group of girls were out there, and they were having a hard time pushing. I'm thinking, man, they're probably really getting fatigued. It's going to be, and it was a long paddle. And when they showed up, they were giggling, they were laughing, they were had a great time. It's like, did you not even see what was going on there? I mean, it was a gale force winds out there. Your canoe was rocking and all that. And it's like they just kept working, they kept pushing, and they just kept a positive attitude. And I was like, okay, great. It was amazing. And they were infectious to the rest of the team. They just had such a good outlook on it. And didn't ever stop. They just kept pushing, but slow and steady. Yeah.
All right, there's a comment in the chat. I'll read that. Shalonda said, I love the story of you sitting with the student for an hour and the other students helped motivate them. She said, that's the 4-H way for sure. I was in 4-H and enjoyed it. So thanks for that testimonial, Shalonda. All right, other questions?
Shalonda, were you 4-H'er in Arkansas? Just curious. I don't know if she ever came to the 4-H center. Anyway, that's great.
Yes, absolutely. And that's is it Ferndale?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, great. Thank you. See, there's one of our success stories. Look at that. She's looking for higher ed opportunities. Great.
Shalonda is definitely a success story. We're not give it all to 4-H. We know there are other things that have impacted you, Shalonda, but that was one of the things.
Thank you.
Other questions? Chantel, I see a physical hand. Yes, go ahead.
So JJ, what is a goal that you are currently working with your team to reach for 4-H?
That is a good question and very timely. I think one of the things, at least for a facility like us, it's important to leave things for future employees and 4-Hers beyond, when I retire or when I'm no longer with the facility. And so sometimes you take a risk when you have a building project, a capital project, and there's not a lot of funders that are willing to give you money for capital improvement projects. You see tons of money for scholarships and a lot of other things, but when it comes to building projects, it's just a little different. You may have to have a connection to be able, and we do a lot of things in 4-H because of donations, and donors differ. Well, I'm at the point in my career, I'm thinking like, what am I going to leave for the people after me? Because I'm on some huge shoulders here. I mean, you think about what Mr. Vines did to build this place here, and then the person that hired me, and the person that hired me has been out of extension for 12 years. The guy's still on our board, and he's helping out, even he lives in Oklahoma. Anyway, so there's a project, we're building a pavilion, and we just ordered a huge, and it's about a $400,000 project. So it's not major, but it's going to provide some opportunities that we don't have, still do programming out of the rain. It's going to have additional seating for eating place, but not everybody on the team was for this. There was some pushback, and people get nervous when you talk about new projects like that. It's like, oh gosh, should we do this? And I'm like, if Mr. Vines had thought about it, he spent 10 years raising money before they ever put a shovel in the ground. in the 70s, and this place was built in the 80s. And then, so I've reflected on that. It's like, I need to do something to make sure that it's better off. I think we've grown the programs, and it's becoming, sustainable. By the way, hospitality was not the place to be during COVID. So just know that. Hope we never have another pandemic. So we're getting back to where we were pre-pandemic, because before that we had several record years in a row, and we're able to do some projects, and we're getting back on that. And we're looking at an additional pavilion in addition to the one I just mentioned. And it's exciting. It's kind of fun that, we've got a lot of supportive folks, and it looks like those things are going to happen. So I guess, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but even though physical capital improvement programs or projects, like, that's exciting, because I can see people using that for decades.
All right, Kristen, any questions in the chat?
We do. We have a question from Suzette, and she asks, have you experienced leaders with difficulty of being willing to do anything you would ask them to do?
Have I had a difficulty with like them not doing everything that I asked them to do?
I think it's that when you talked about, you have to be willing to do what you ask other people to do. Have you had leaders that were not willing to do that?
How much time do we have? Yeah. And sometimes, and I think a lot of you, if you work with volunteerism or groups, then you're very aware that sometimes the adults are the problem. We encourage the teenagers to go on this program without their parents. That doesn't always happen. And sometimes it's a great match. Just, everybody's dynamics are a little bit different there, but oh yeah. Matter of fact, we've even had to have volunteers that we've asked not to be a part of projects anymore. And sometimes you have to do that. That's a tough conversation to have. But when it becomes more toxic, and because again, part of the university, our overall goal is to give these kids life skills. And if an adult or volunteer is impeding their progress, then that's our job. We've got to make sure that they're not, and there's a series of tactics that we try, maybe give them another job, encourage them to do something else before we ask them to step out. But yes, we have had issues with that. Unfortunately, we've been very fortunate overall. I mean, those are rare cases, but you know how it is, those stick out in your mind. Overall, we've been pretty fortunate, but yeah, we've had to ask people not to, because their influence is more of a detriment to that. I mean, multiple kids or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's, sometimes people don't need to be an influence on them. So, yep.
And then I see a comment from Veronica Myers also, speaking out for something she was influenced by at the weekend retreat. She was chair with the Disability Rights Arkansas PAIM/AC for a weekend retreat. And she says, thank you for the reset when that happened. So.
Oh, well, thank you all. We appreciate it. The only way we're able to have kids and other groups, whether it's 4-H or not, only what we say is staying with us is giving back. So our adult clients make it possible for the youth to be here. So it's definitely a nonprofit, and our money goes back into the facility. It also goes back into helping kids have the opportunity to come out here for camp. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, Kristen, I see another question.
We actually have a two-parter from Dr. Thompson. The first question she asks is, how many events do you lead a year?
So me personally, I unfortunately have whatever they call moving up the chain. So I don't get to do as many as I used to, but when I was in the Excel program, my coworker, Shannon Caldwell, which is now the program director, is on this. She's also a graduate of your program and of LEADAR. So I may have to refer to her because the current contracts, I think I remember working, I think it was somewhere around, I think we had 261 one year groups. Those are day long leadership team development programs. Some of the programs were longer than a day. Some of them were half days. And then as far as the wilderness hikes, oh, aside from the hikes, never mind. So do we have them journal? Yes, we do. We have in the past. We encourage them to bring a journal. I don't actively sit down and do a journaling session with them, but we do have a journaling class here at the 4-H Center. It's more of a nature journaling opportunity. The kids all get the opportunity to go out and take some time to reflect and what they see, and then they come together as a group and discuss it and process that with the group. So it just varies. That will vary on, with the facilitator.
All right, Kristen, they're all coming in through the chat. So
So Shalonda asked, do you all partner with local organizations that work with at-risk children to help introduce them to 4-H?
We do, but we also have each county has a 4-H agent or a project assistant that's a program assistant. So there's 75 counties in Arkansas, and each of them do that. So yes, the 4-H Center has worked with them, but that's usually because the 4-H agent brings them to us because they have more time to spend with them, especially if it's a local area. And that's part of what they're paid to do, depending on the county that you're in and how much time that they have to allocate that. But yeah, 4-H definitely does that. As a matter of fact, we had a student here. She had gone through the high adventure program several years, ended up getting her PhD, but her project for her dissertation was how do you get someone, I think it was paraplegic, into the wilderness. And she worked with a group that had a type of wheelchair that had one wheel that you could hike with and take that person for a wilderness experience. And that was her project, because she was able to work with it, and she actually took her friend that was a paraplegic onto the trail with this one-wheeled, I mean, for lack of a better usage, it looked a lot like a wheelbarrow, but obviously ergonomically correct and more durable, lighter weight, and more of a bicycle type wheel, and took that person out there to give them a wilderness experience. And I think it worked very well. She even got a little bit of a sponsorship from one of the manufacturers of that device.
well, we have time probably for one more question. So who would like to end with the last question? Looking for hands.
Looks like Veronica has her hand up.
All right, Veronica, you'll end us with your question here.
It's really just a comment. The PAIMIAC is the Protection and Advocacy of Individuals with Mental Illness Advisory Council that I sat on during my tenure with the Disability Rights Arkansas. And we had a retreat at 4-H, which taught us about leadership and trying to come together to make certain decisions and to implement motivation and things that we wanted to take place for inclusive environments for those of special needs and mental illness. And so I want to thank you again for that reset, not just from then, but even tonight, because I'm going through a little bit of a professional, I don't want to say tug of war, I guess. And so this lecture tonight helped.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. You're going to make me teary-eyed.
I got
thank
some
you.
stories to tell.
We appreciate it, but it's without this place, the clients, they make it happen. And also I try to surround myself with a really good team, and I've been extremely fortunate, and it's a fun place to work. So yeah, because you can go home at night feeling good about what you've done, and the people around you made a difference.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Well, you can tell that, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight to talk to us about motivation. And I know I was thinking about my own work and also a nonprofit that I work with, and thinking about things that I could do to improve. So lots of great ideas here. Thank you all for all coming tonight too. We really appreciate your support of our leadership lectures for the Department of Applied Communication at UA Little Rock. And I hope that you all have a great evening. Let's give kind of applause for JJ tonight. Really appreciate getting to have you with us. So, and thank you for all the work that you do. So with that, we're going to call it a night and hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Good to see you, JJ, and
Good
others.
to see you, Dr. Driscoll. Thank you. And